Okay, so we're back. We had two sessions already where Leva walked us through what happened when she was first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 9, how she went through her childhood years, the innocent years of childhood, going into being an angry, rebellious teenager, and then settling into adult life, work life, where she had pretty much given hope on her health getting any better. And we happened to meet, and as your endocrinologist, I was able to make some insulin changes, get you onto an insulin pump, teach you carbohydrate counting. The technical medical things started to go better. Your physical health had started to get much better. And where we left off in the last video was, even though the diabetes was getting better, a sudden sort of change had happened on your personal front in your relationships. A significant relationship was possibly going to be ending, which was a very big shock for you. And you had come to the clinic with slightly high blood glucose levels. And as your doctor, I had been working on your case for long enough that I was quite confident that this was not a pump setting change that needed to be done. I could tell that there was some stress, there was something going on, and I literally basically refused to change your insulin dose. I could have, looking back, I could have just pumped you with more insulin, but somehow something made me feel safe enough to tell you that no, Leva, there's something else that's driving your sugars up, and giving you more insulin is not the root cause answer to this. And you, in the previous video, you said that, it was like you were getting one slap after another. Life was giving you slap, slap, slap. It was getting very tough. So take it forward from there and tell me what was going on with you.
I think you put it quite rightly. Even from, like you said, from giving extra insulin, that was a possibility. And I'm sure that would have been the solution that most people would have gone with. Just met that, just given that insulin and just tell a person, come check your blood sugars and just see how it's working. And that may help temporarily. It does not really go down to the root cause of the problem. And actually understanding the root cause of the problem just solves so many challenges, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and makes you a better version of yourself. Things that did not really resonate with me back then. And it's not something that I could comprehend. One important aspect you did mention, which still stays in my head today, was anything or anybody cannot impact your life the way you're letting it impact right now. And you said that just a month before this person just completely ghosted and vanished from my life with just a message and nothing beyond, no explanation, and no closure. But it just happened, and you prepared me for the worst. You did mention that anybody, nothing should be impacting you this way. You should be able to manage and overcome. And that was such an important lesson. It's not just for people with diabetes, actually. It's for everybody, everyone who's living on this planet. Anything can happen at any point. It's how you respond rather than react. And I've been reacting to situations over the years, always. It's just instantaneous emotions that just are surfacing, they're just bubbling, they've just been there. And like I mentioned, I never spoke about it previously. It was all bubbled in, or the diary knew it, and diary can't respond back. So it's just there. And if anyone comes even close enough or touches, I just snap. Or and of course, because you were a doctor, I couldn't. and there was my mother telling me, please don't shout, don't get angry. She's so scared of my reactions because she has seen me, rebel immediately when someone gives an advice or someone who suggests something that is beyond what I believe in. I'd immediately respond there. So she would come to me for appointments, just like, don't listen to the doctor, like a constant request till date. Even when I'm recording this, she'll be nice. I'm like, Mom, you've not raised a crazy person. It's okay. But that's her childhood, because that's how I would react. It's just there in her head. And it was so important to have that conversation and sit down there and slowly just take a step back and understand, where is this coming from? Where is this insecurity coming from? The fact that, and this is something that you immediately told me, was stop sending negative messages out there. Because I kept saying, I'm not worth it. No one's going to marry me. I'm not happy. And I remember EFT, emotional freedom technique. It was so important. And at that time, the cynical version of me is like, why am I doing this? I've come here for insulin. Very simple. I had a very simple agenda here. But you went to the emotional freedom technique, which is something I practiced till date. And I have, in fact, many of my friends have benefited from this by just following a very simple scientific approach of just loving and accepting yourself. And I remember you just saying, what are the things bothering you? And I was like, where do I start? I've never gone and spoken to anybody. I've never had counseling. I've not had one-on-one chats. So I'm like, I have a lot of things to crib about. And I had so much to crib about. I realized I didn't have anything to be grateful about because my mind was just focusing on the negatives. And I'm blessed. I had an amazing family. I had a good health. I had shelter. I had money. I had food. What else do you need? But I focused on the one and only thing which I believed was ruining my life, diabetes. And now it had come to the state of marriage.
Yeah.
And who I believed, because I was looking more for the love that I believed I didn't receive at home or from, or what is expected out of it. And I also remember you mentioned this aspect of how it was really sweet of you to explain this, of how love is is expressed in different ways by different people. And that was important for me to understand. Some talk about it, some just express by gifts, some will cook for you. I didn't understand that. For
Love
me,
language.
yes. And I don't mean this as a partner. I mean this as a parent. I mean as a friend. I mean as a teacher. I mean, love is universal. But not everyone is going to sit there and say, I love you. And that's what I wanted to hear. And my family, we don't say that. We don't hug each other. We don't say, I love you. We don't say it, but it's expressed in different ways. The fact that your parents take so much care of you and have gone to such lengths, it didn't, in my head, it didn't convert to love. To me, that was like, they don't love me. Because I've seen parents who come and hug their children, and I'm like, mine don't. Why is the case? Because this is the upbringing, right? It's a cultural background on how you've come up. But I didn't resonate with that. Then when you explained that, things slowly started falling or making little more sense in my head. I wouldn't say it was a complete transformation, and I got it, but it just started helping me understand what I was looking for, because I was always craving for that typical love and that attention that was expected out of people who care, and that's not what I received even in this relationship. So I was like, what's wrong, and things that way. So when we had the conversation and I give the option of, you need to do something from from either yoga or hypnotherapy or go for Reiki. You're given multiple options. EFT is something you and I have practiced, and also emotional converse. There was counseling also as an option that you had given. There were all of these that I had to, and you said you should do this to move forward. And I don't know why, but I said fine, I will go ahead with this. And because like I told you, I knew I had to meditate. I knew I was a stressed out person, and that's what I have also seen at home. It's also important to understand from a child who's growing up. You see what's happening in your family, or how people are reacting to situations. So I have combined a mix of what my mother would react and how my father would react. So my mother lives in fear of everything wrong that can happen to me. My father lives in stress, and he just bursts in that sudden moment. I have the combination of two. So I've been living in fear, and which is something that I spoke to my mother, complete sweetheart, absolutely love her. But I did tell her, Mom, a lot of these are your fears. They're not my fears. And while it's concern coming from your end, it is also, in a way, blocking my growth. It is not letting me explore. For example, even if I go for a walk, Mom is like hypo. are you okay? Do a blood test, eat this, carry that. And it's not 15 carbs. You're like, have full banana. I'm like, that's 30, have more. I'm like, mom, no. So then it took me a long time to understand that this child was innocent at some point, had no fears. Child had no stress. Child was just living. And the child has observed all of this and realized that's the way to adapt and live. And them, they have of course got it from their upbringing. So it's also when I have slowly moved into this phase of become more health conscious, growing to a new person from a human who was completely least bothered, didn't care anything. I'm going to die anyway, doesn't matter. I'd even thought I would die before 20, then I thought 30, 40. I'd actually written this, not going to live long enough, who cares? So from that, because that's what I'd heard, to a person who is now transformed into somebody who wants to live, who wants to enjoy life, who has a purpose, who is seeing beauty and positivity everywhere. It also meant that there was this the fear was still there, the stress. These two that have come from childhood are still there. They haven't disappeared.
Yeah.
And both of which were in a way enacting in this marriage issue that was us facing. The fear of not finding someone and the stress of dealing with the situation. They just both combined together. And this still goes on. It's reduced today, but it's still there. I know it. And I've reached a level of spirituality where I can observe it. I can even feel it. And it's beautiful to observe yourself and how you're reacting. And I didn't know that back then, but that just I think that was where it hit rock bottom. And like I always feel this, when the universe always sends you somebody to guide you through that phase. I have all this while, nothing has happened to me that has been so traumatic or so dangerous, because there's been something that's looking out for me, somebody, source, God, universe, divine energy, something is guiding me throughout. From school days, I had the teacher, I had a professor, I had good friends who took care of me during hypos, who would stand by me in college, and I had bosses who took care of me, who'd always come out. If I was in meetings, I had two of my juniors, and one was to meet you, doctor, at Hinduja Hospital. There was a strike. I had one guy drop me on the bike to the hospital, meet you. Second one came and picked me up because of the strike. I had people stop meetings because I was too scared to speak up. The juniors would stop and say, Leva, it's time for lunch. Let's take a break. I wouldn't speak. I had juniors who would do that. I had juniors who'd carry Glucon-D with them. I didn't ask them to. Minute they knew had diabetes, they bought it, they carried it. I tell them, they would break down crying. I'm like, why are you guys crying? They're like, we never knew that behind that smile. I'm like, that's okay. But I had people around. There was this invisible army around me. I just chose not to see. My husband was my friend for years. The universe sent that person there, that this is your life partner, but realized I was not ready. I was so in that mindset. So I had to learn that lesson. So there always has been, and it's important to, when you at hindsight, when you think about it, there's always been somebody looking out for you. You just didn't see it. You're so angry and upset in life. You just didn't see it. And then when we started this spiritual journey of Reiki, which is a different ball game altogether, again coming from a science background and a family that's coming from that thinking, no one understood what that meant. It was also something that I went blindly because you mentioned it. I was like, this sounds interesting. This is going to change my life, right? I'm like, I'll go with it. I don't know how it's going to impact me. It's something that I've not done. And I would always go from a scientific approach of what is a proof, or where is that data? What are you talking about? And the first month, the first 21 days that you start with Reiki, and I met Rukmani, and I went to a place. When that energy enters you itself and you feel the transformation, that's when I started believing in it, because you experience it. A lot of things spiritual and religious is when you experience it as opposed to what people tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And I had mentioned previously, I was not a religious person. I had given up the belief because of what people told me as a child. It's your fault. And I had while my parents didn't, they kept praying. My grandmother kept praying because nobody had this condition. Everyone kept praying. But I didn't believe it because people kept saying that there's going to be a cure, there's going to be a cure. Don't worry, in 3 years it'll be a cure, 4 years it'll be a cure. There wasn't a cure. If you tell a child that, the child believes it. You tell an adult that, it's the person is more, the brain is more developed to accept what is. So at that stage, when I went there and I started the process of Reiki, it was such a beautiful, calming experience. And I remember the entire aspect in the affirmations. I mixed a bit of EFT that talks about loving and accepting yourself, because I think that was so important. I just focused on all the imperfections in me my entire life, though, because it was always, I didn't have the perfect organ. So I was trying to build the perfect, be the perfect daughter, which I seem to have failed miserably at that time. I wouldn't be the top student. I would be someone who gets 80% or 75%, but there were people who got above. And my family, of course, were doctors and engineers. So you have to be superbly good at that. And I wouldn't. Sports was something I tried to excel in, but I couldn't. So there was something or the other that would stop. Of course, even from an appearance perspective, I was like, oh, those people. That's when it all started, because I'm like, I'm not perfect here. Something should be done perfectly. Oh, I have glasses. Can I throw it? I even tried wearing lens at a point and rode on a bike, and there's an ulcer in my eye. And the doctor had to tell me, you look good the way you are. Don't wear lenses. You have diabetes. Don't impact your vision for it. I was like, no, but everyone's teasing me because of glasses. So it was always, again, that fitting in just comes in. So that perfection of that was what I was always aiming to do. And a lot of it was something that impacted me, and I was studying Reiki. Things started making sense. The most beautiful things was I forgave my then partner. I forgave his mother, because that mother had consumed a year of my life with hatred. I was like, how dare she? It was so much of, because I'm like, you are stopping the what I thought was a path to happiness and joy. In hindsight, it would have never been the path of happiness and joy. Anybody around could see me at that time. I couldn't. But when I forgave, and I remember every time I did this, when I was practicing Reiki at home, I would cry. I would just burst, and I never cried. I was like, I'll never cry, but I would just cry. And I'm like, what's happening to me? I mean, this is not the person I know. Like, why am I crying so much? And I was just forgiving. When I forgave um, uh, the mother, I think that is when I felt lighter. I felt like 10 kilos off me. And I actually physically lost weight. Remember, doctor, I had this conversation with you.
You
I
lost weight.
lost, yeah, because there was so much of it. I forgave even a lot of the conversations I've heard from relatives, from friends about diabetes, people who shared opinions about me, about my health, what I should do. More importantly, I even felt closer to my family because I mentally remove those blocks, forgive my father. He's an amazing person. His intent is always, always, always parental. He's trying to help me. He's trying to get the best for his children. His approach was different from what I would have gone with. But to me, that at that time didn't make sense. But when I started this entire spiritual journey, I understood my father better. I took a step back and thought of how did he grow up as a child? They didn't have so much financial backing, either of my parents. My grandparents are teachers, 4 of them. So for them to think of a child with so much of financial uh, burden would be the word, because it's a lot of money just coming in and just progressively increasing. It is a lot of stress, and it takes a stress on the entire family. And I have a brother who may have felt neglected, because suddenly the focus is at that time I didn't think of all of this, because I was like, my brother is a pain, he's not looking at me, I don't like my sibling, he has a better life. But if I was now thinking back, my poor brother didn't get the attention, because their entire focus is keeping this child alive, keeping this, ensuring this child has medical support, having financial support here, ensuring that she gets the right thing. So even though I would say that the approach wasn't what I would take, the intent was always there for every, and in during the Reiki sessions, it all comes back. every college or school thing, when I had to come late, he would pick me up. He'd pick me from the station. He'd pick me from the bus so that no one comes around me or impacts me in any way. If there's any guy, God forbid, who comes near me, my father's there to protect. And everyone was scared of him, like, oh God, not Leva's father, which meant, of course, they would tease me about it, but it was pure love. My father was looking out for me. He was already worried that he's lost his child, nearly lost his child in the ICU. It shouldn't happen again. And that's what my mom felt too. So it was one of those. And then somewhere it was also important to heal that child, which till date I do, because a child in me is still there. That 9-year-old child whose life suddenly changed still lives there. And my husband points that out very often, because I still go and try and snatch some food and eat, because I'm like, I didn't eat when I was younger, I want to eat. And I have to tell myself, it's over, you can eat it now. And even this morning, I give Reiki to that child just to heal, because it's there, it's constantly there in everything that you do. But that entire process of healing changed a lot. The initial days, because of the change in diet, because you have to have vegetarian food, and there was a lot of change in my body. There were blood sugar fluctuations. The intent, the need to be perfect still woke up, like your sugars are fluctuating. I remember messaging you and saying, Doctor, sugars are fluctuating. And you were saying, it's fine, go through the entire process. And after 21 days, on the 21st days, when that ex-partner messaged and said bye-bye with no explanation, and he left. And the beauty of it was everything negative left on the 21st day of the cleanse. And the best part was my sugar was 100 through the day. It didn't move up one bit. It just showed the progress or the impact, positivity, and your mind has on you. It was a month ago, it would just fluctuate. And I did try till a month ago calling him, can I call you for and wish you for happy? Am I allowed to call you? That was the tone. Can I wish you? Is this the time I'm allowed to? And he'll call like, yeah, like Happy New Year. How are you, Tish? And I was like, still, I was like, what is wrong with you? But from that time till I finished this entire spiritual journey and just reflected on a lot of on myself and what I was doing to myself, a lot of things became clear. A lot of tears, a lot of healing. And this was also the time when those spots were in my eyes, the diabetes retinopathy spots. So I was healing my eyes and just praying that things get better. And that's when I went for a eye checkup, I think in February, March. And then it was 6 months since my test in September, October. And that's when it came all clear. And I was like, oh my God, this is magic. it actually just disappeared. And my ophthalmologist, also a person who rarely spoke, opened up suddenly, started speaking about Reiki. And I was like, what is happening? This man never speaks more than 2 words. He's smiling. He says he gives Reiki to crows, to animals. And I was like, oh, wow. And that's when I started receiving. And this is important because it just builds positivity in you. People around me started telling me that they can see a very positive and happy person. My colleagues started telling me this because just a year before is this was a year in 2015 that there was a lot of change in my life. One, from this perspective, but also moving ahead, there was the entire transition of my company, and my mentor, my boss, who I said was very, very considerate, all of them moved out. So it was a change again, and again was a shift. And I was like, oh God, again, the thing of insecurity, the stability that you have in life, the anchor that's moving out. And it was, I think, Reiki that prepared me to just stay calm, don't react, just go with the situation. There, things are going to get better. And that's what I went with. And was also beautiful because I would get messages. For example, while the ex-partner moved out, I had reconnected with my then husband just a year before, when I think after I met you. I just reconnected with my husband as friends, and he was not in a great place. I was not in a great place. We both were suffering respectively. Both of us have similar issues of not letting go or not being the one to let go, because we'll just keep trying and trying and trying to make things work. So he and I just reconnected, and we continued being friends. And then we started connecting more since this Reiki conversation. he started talking about The Secret, and my husband never spoke about anything except jokes. So I was like, he's talking about the movie Secret and how you manifest by talking positively. And I didn't even know this side of him. Like, why you speak? I'm like, what's happening? All my friends around me started speaking positive things, which never happened before. To
Hmm.
me, that was, am I attracting this? And then there was a time when I moved towards my for a wedding, and of course, in India, people ask questions when you're getting
Yeah.
married. What's
Yeah.
happening? And it was too fresh a wound to just talk about it. And I had lost weight with
Mhm.
Reiki. And then the focus was, you're so thin, you're not looking good. Why have you lost weight? You're not looking great. Asking my mother, something wrong with her. There are people asking, does she have a severe medical condition? People started saying that. And I was like, stay calm. It's fine. It's okay. Because the stress also had caused a lot of pimples, acne on my face the previous year, and I'd gone to a dermatologist as well.
Mhm.
I got white hair with stress, which I still proudly wear as a reminder of what I've actually overcome and where I've reached. But everybody around, those people just kept focusing on that aspect, the physical appearance, but not that the person is happy, is in a better place of mind, but they just kept focusing on it. And I had to meditate a lot to stay calm and not react to it, because the person in me, the ego, would wake up and say that. And one important thing to talk about is, and anybody who does a spiritual journey will definitely agree with it, is you start getting messages and signs and ways of how it's being communicated. So for me, it was when I would walk around, I would get answers through hymns, just
Mm.
something, and I would just burst into tears for no reason. And I always liked hymns. I would go and pray when nobody watches when I pray, because I don't like everyone looking at you, or you dress up and go to a place of worship is not something that resonates with me. But then it just happened that way. And one important part was a message that came directly from above when I was at the wedding, which was near this ex-partner's place, where I was looking at the wedding and wondering, oh God, I'll never find anyone. I'm already old. What's going to happen? And then immediately a voice came, and this is from the Bible, that said, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. And that is a word that's a phrase that Jesus had said when he was crucified. I do have to reiterate, I'm not a religious person. I'm not somebody who just comes up with this. It just boomed in my head, and I just turned around wondering who's talking to me at a wedding. I didn't realize it's coming from inside. And then something just melted in me. It was just something divine energy just entered in me, and I was just shaken by that entire experience. And I was like, wow. I just walked out feeling so much better. And there were rickshaws. When I was in the rickshaw, there was a sign that said "Be positive." So I was like, okay. And it just sounds so something that people don't believe in. But all of these small things, the forgiveness part was a huge thing, because the emotions that impact the blood sugars, that had completely gone. It was not there anymore. So that
Mm.
was one thing that I would say was a big learning. And then moving on to the fact that there's a change with my entire team moving out back to back. That was a change, and I couldn't comprehend about how do I deal with this. A lot of uncertainty. Who's a new boss? Who are they? How are they going to treat you? The stress of working there, because I was still driving for perfection. The fear was still in me, the stress part was still in me from childhood, and the intent to be perfect in everything I do till date. I still want that perfect blood sugar, always want to be in control of the situation. Entering the unknown is not something that I was comfortable with,
Yeah.
and still finds me difficult too, because I've given up a lot of interesting opportunities, I would say, or interesting or change the route that the universe has sent for me from something that's unknown in my life, which I was afraid to get into because I don't know what's going to happen to my health. I always put diabetes first. If I'm moving to UK, how does it work here? It's a developed country, but my head, no, 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 no. Dr. Roshni is not there. What if I faint? Who's going to bother? So it's always that fear, which I realized much later I have to get over that. But another interesting thing to highlight was my first international trip in 2015 was landing was a 18 to 20 hours flight, and was straight in the ICU of the US. And that was the first picture I took from the ICU was the hospital. And
God.
it was it started with a hypo because I didn't know we were walking through the entire Mumbai International Airport at night. So your basals are different. I was still new to the pump. And then the flight, a long flight. And of course, I ate the carbs available on the flight. I didn't know what they had in outside food back then. So I said, okay, I'll eat it. It's breakfast time. I'm following the clock still, not hunger. How we ask now, are you really hungry? Do you need to eat when you're inactive? It was 18 to 20 hours of just sitting on a flight. You don't need food. You don't need so much food. And I'm stacking up on carbs, and I can see the sugar 60 went to 160, then it's gone higher. And I would do blood test only 3 times at that time. I was not, I hadn't reached the phase of 7 that I started doing. And then it just went higher. And I think the worst part was when it went to, it was 200. And I had a wrap that they gave just before descent to the US, but I wanted to eat it because I was like, you're getting it. And also probably the intent that it's free food, you've paid for it, eat it. So why give it up? So I think they gave an ice cream or something that which I didn't eat, because in my head, sugar is bad still. So I didn't eat that. Carbs were good. So I ate that. And the biggest mistake I could have ever done, and I haven't done since then, was not drinking water. Because it's perfection, I need things clean. I can't look at things that are unhygienic and dirty. My head said 18 hours on a flight means the toilet is dirty. You'll get an infection from the toilet. Again, these are things that I've heard from mom as well. But the toilets, yeah, you can be careful. You have diabetes, be careful. Urinary infections, so many things that can happen. So I tried maximum not to utilize the loo. So I didn't drink water. That's 18 to 20 hours without water. And then when I landed there, the immigration officer asked me, are you fine? I'm like, I'm perfectly fine. And I was just staring into space, looking around. And she's like telling my mother, I don't think your daughter is fine. She's like, no, because it's jet lag, first time ever international. Who knew? Went home, slept, not on a blood test after that. Slept, woke up after an hour, and I'm just not feeling fine. I'm just puking. I started puking. I puked, and I did a blood test that time. It was 300. Of course, I panicked as usual. My first reaction when I see high sugar at that time, because I had started becoming, my A1C was 6.2. So for me, I had to be in that range, and I have reached that. Yes. So I started puking. And then mom got lime water and said, just drink water, you will feel better. When I couldn't keep in water, I puked about 5 times. And I'm like, I can't even drink water. I took insulin through the patch. Usually the level comes down. This is going higher. I was like, why is the patch? I thought I have to change the patch. I thought maybe the patch isn't working. Then I puked again. Thank God my mother saved my life for the second time. And she was like, rush her to the emergency. Rush her to the emergency. I was like, what? I'm not going to a hospital. My father's first reaction was, oh my God, it's expensive. It's US. It is. And it's not, it's really expensive there. But the first reaction, my mother realized it's DK. I didn't. I didn't have memory of what a DK is. But I was just puking water. And we had gone to US to meet my nephew, who was just 2 months old. My poor sister-in-law had just delivered a baby, C-sec, so much pain. They just forgot everything. One of them jumped in, rushed in the ER. And I'm like, I'm fine. Because in my head, a DK means you're on the verge of death kind of thing. I'm like, it's just 300. It's okay. I'm fine. I mean, my sugars have gone higher.
Yeah.
Without the pump, I was on 400. I just exercised. It came up 400 to 100. I'm like, that's a child's play. It's 300. What are you guys getting hyper about? Go to the hospital. And then when I was in the ICU, I'm telling everyone, it's just DK, guys. Just chill. Just give me insulin and saline. I'm telling people what to do. And of course, it's US, so they tested for Ebola. They checked for pregnancy 2-3 times, because nobody could understand why you've gone to DK. And I didn't have the answer either. They're like, did you do something? Because they said pregnancy could cause it. So they were twice sent my parents out. And I'm like, no, I know I'm not pregnant. So they were like, no, but there should be some reason. So there are a lot of tests. And the sugars came down, came to 200, because they got the saline, checked the potassium. And I was just chit-chatting with all the doctors. And in the ICU, I can hear other people being revived. You can hear people how serious they are. And I'm chit-chatting, talking about movies, saying, oh, this is a place where they shot Grey's Anatomy. It's such a wonderful hospital. Is that how it works? And while I entertain them, I'm sure they must be wondering, this is one patient who's just chit-chatting. Because to me, I didn't realize how serious it was till you messaged me. I had messaged you, but it was India time. So US and India time. You said that's how it's as serious as it can get. And
Oh.
I was like, oh, I see. Oh, okay. Because in my head, I was like, okay. I'm like, you just gave something, I'm fine. You just gave me water. But I didn't realize that. That's when it struck me, because he said the pH of your body is not 7 as it should be. You've not been drinking water, and I've lost so much weight. They couldn't find veins in my body because of the lack of dehydration. They were poking, and I was thin. I thought they'll reach my bones. But they kept me in the ICU for a day and a half and gave me food. Uh, it was lesser carbs, but they had their version of carbs that India wouldn't. But that was one experience that was life changing. But throughout that, I was so calm. But I'm the one chit chatting. I just looked at my parents, because I was talking about me, right? My mother had a look of such pain and trauma of what it reminded her of what she went through in 1996, where she thought, and it's an ICU, DK. She's like, this is happening to my child again. My father's back in the financial stress because US won't discharge you. And my father's worried about how much this cost because it's US. And I don't blame him, because it was about 17 lakhs for a day and a half in the US. So I don't blame him for what he said. Mom thought she has to write to Obama to tell them to help with healthcare when someone is in this condition. But it was that entire trauma, because you think about what you're going through. I look here, my mother wasn't, I've not seen her reaction. She's just staring. I'm sure she was praying, but that trauma impacts them and them. Even at that point, when if I brought up about my ex-partner, I forgive, I laugh. She had trauma. She had a trauma of what happened to my child. So it's just an entire family that goes through that entire experience. But yeah, that entire thing about, I think Reiki and spirituality helped me be so calm during the entire experience on the flight, when feeling uneasy, being the ICU, being told you have DK, and then adjusting to the US life. It was something that was frightening, more frightening to get back on the flight to come back to India. I'm like, oh God, I have to come back. This time my mom wasn't there. My head, mom can save your life, dad can't. Mom has saved you twice. So I'm like, and dad will. I know we both have temperament issues. So I'm like, I will fight, he will fight. But this time we carried food from home, because I said, I am not having outside food anymore. So I carried the food and we got back safe, and it was a much better experience. And another thing to also believe in, the stress of that money was impacting. So while I was meditating, and we had insurance, they were very clear that they don't cover pre-existing conditions. But it just is a fact. But it wasn't a pre-existing condition because it was diabetes. I mean, it was not. It was DKA, which I'd not had since then.
Yeah.
It was just purely my brother and sister-in-law fighting and me praying, and then while meditating, I got an answer that it's going to be sorted out. And actually, I don't know how they gave in, and we had to pay just 4 lakhs. So it's just the beauty of prayers and believing above. It just helps you stay calm and helps you with the entire journey there. But yeah, that was just a glimpse into some of the immediate changes and how things moved from there. For
Wow. No, it's huge. I mean, do you think that at any point you lost faith in God
during this ordeal in
in
this
life?
year?
In life.
Oh yeah, I lost a lot. In the earlier years, I didn't even believe in that, I think. But I did have this thing where before every injection, I would pray, because the Lantus injections that I would take was so painful. I would wake up in the middle of the night crying, because it was not getting absorbed. There was like a boil being formed after. I was to take 35 units at a time at the same spot. So I don't think it was getting absorbed. And I would push it inside. There were times that when I should take the pen shots, I was trying saving money. In my head, I'm a financial burden. I'm using the same needle continuously, so it doesn't enter your skin. I'm poking it, it's bleeding. I'm biting my lips start bleeding, but I'm not telling anyone that because I'm like, I can't be a bigger burden to my family. So I would not really do that. So it was so much of that. I stopped believing. I'm like, why are you making me go through? I mean, okay, get it, 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, but there has to be a solution to, I mean, there should be something that cuts it down. I think the pump helped a lot with that because it was also reducing those number of shots. I never got those kind of the part where your skin doesn't absorb till date, which is
Lipodystrophy.
I'm really blessed because that didn't happen to my stomach area, which is surprising because it's been 10 years of doing that. But my legs couldn't take it. My thighs couldn't really absorb the insulin. So it was an entire aspect of worry and fear and anxiety. The pump did give me an anxiety too, though. But I knew it's a gadget. I mean, even your phone stops working. But I've had a lot of issues with the pump, which is interesting not to give up on.
Well, tell me about that. You've had a very amazing timing with pump malfunction.
Oh God, yes. Who can forget the wedding day? So it has, I mean, again, sometimes I tell myself there's no reason. If I sit and find out why something happened, I'll never be happy with the answer. Other than the fact that things happen for a reason and just find the positive in it. Because anyone who tells me you have diabetes because of this reason, it'll still irritate you. I'm like, you're living a normal life. Don't sit and tell me that. But the wedding, like the pump was working fine all this time. I still had anxiety about the pump. And wedding day,
2017.
20th May 2017. So I had planned it. I had carried a backup inserter, backup for a blood test, a lot of pad sites. It was from Mumbai to Goa. It wasn't abroad, so it was nearby. But backup for everything. You think about everything except a pump, because that never struck me. I carried pens, thankfully, and Lantus, all of that. And I wore a gown which is made like a lehenga, which no one has ever worn in church. I was the first one. So I thought of putting the pump on this, attaching it on the skirt and just going with that. And, not being different. That was my head, I'm being different. And just go with it. And I had a purse which had a glucose biscuit. It had the required blood test kits. There's something called a bridesmaid, the person who stands behind you. She had a glucose dabba. My husband had a glucose dabba. Mother had, everybody had, because I was like hypo. No one thought of it going there. And then it Goa's humid. And at that time, I didn't have a cover for the pump. So I just poured the pump as is on the stomach. And it was so humid during May. And during the wedding, I started feeling very hot. I thought it's the humidity. And during the entire mass, it just went on. And once the mass went out there, you have to go to the reception area. But just before that, I had to enter the husband's family side and just be there and just go for some blessings. I started feeling so uneasy. I'm like, something is wrong. I'm just feeling uneasy, little pukish sensation. I was like, is this what people say they get scared of marriage? But in my head, I'm already married. I was legally married 2 months ago. And I'm like, this is a church wedding. I'm like, now what am I getting worried about? And then when I just thought I'd do a blood test, it was 268. Want to do a correction. The buttons don't work of the pump. It just blanked out. I had batteries backup. I had 3 pump batteries. I changed each pump battery. It's not working. The pump isn't working. All the meditation flew off. I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? So we went to the reception area, got my mom. I'm like, you have to call Dr. Roshni, call Dr. Roshni. Goa didn't have network. You were in an area that didn't have network.
And yes, had network, it was my best friend's wedding. It was my best friend's wedding on the exact same day in the US, in Zion National Park, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's a wilderness park. And we were in the hotel getting ready to go for his wedding events in the park where there would be 0 signal for the next 5 hours.
Wow.
And I was on the hotel Wi-Fi having breakfast before we go for the wedding. And I got this call from you guys. And I was like, Liva, I would have left this campus in the next 20 minutes and I would have been unreachable for the next 5 hours.
I can't even imagine that. Because it was, like I said, there's always they find a way to help you. There's something that will always find that way.
And
Because I went back.
the most insane thing for me was you called and you're like, my pump has stopped working. I'm canceling the reception. The wedding is over. I'm canceling the reception and I'm sending the guests back. I was like, no, you're not. You're going to finish this reception.
I remember that. And he also told me, firstly, stay calm. I'm like, doctor, I'm trying to stay calm. It's my wedding. People are all searching for me. If I anyway never liked it. I don't want to be the center of attention. I don't like people looking at me because I'm so conscious that I'm not perfect in my head. So I never liked anyone looking at me, from guys to anything. And this is like, oh God, this is one day that that I'm supposed to be the center of attention. There were people who made up stories that I'm doing this for attention, that they didn't believe this happened. And I'm like, I'm the bride. How much more attention do I need? It's embarrassing that you guys are staring at my face. I don't want any of you looking at me anyway. I was happy with a court wedding and not this entire, getting people out there and just, I'm not someone who does that. But I think it was important at that point to stay positive in the face of adversity, because that was like the timing of it was important, because it was after mass. Everyone went there. The mass is the church part is more important. Definitely. The next is the celebration. And then coming back, rushing, getting the pump, the pen. What do we do with the pen? How much units? What do we eat? Drinking water. And it was, and some drenched with sweat with the stress of it. My mother's face, she was like, my daughter's married to, oh my God, my daughter's back in trouble. Father's back in stress. So it's from happiness to that stress. And then just talking to you, and poor Nigel, he's like, and I apologized to him for a month. I apologized every single day. I'm sorry, I ruined it. I'm ruined. It's my fault. I should have done. I should apologize to my mother, my father, my brother, sister-in-law, my in-laws. I apologize to so many people that I ruined the wedding. I ruined everything. It shouldn't have happened. It's my fault. I should have done that. He's like, and when I think about it, it's just that immediate thing that I am so hard on myself, as a child. Yeah, till date I do that. And he had to tell me, it's not you, it's not your fault. You need to stop doing this, because this stress is impacting my sugars. Everything impacts your sugars. But taking those shots, going back to the wedding after being calm, and I spoke to you and I told you had a very calming effect on me. I would come to meet you when I was supremely stressed in life and just go back calm, because you would drill sense in my thick skull. And I would just go back so much calmer, because you're helping address the root problem. You're just not saying take insulin and go. You're saying this is it. This is a solution. You'll be fine. And using Reiki, meditating, I went back there. And while I didn't have a single thing from the food table, both of us didn't eat that. But I danced. I went there. I danced, because there's an entire wedding entourage. You have to dance, you have to celebrate. In between, I'd run up to the room and put a fan on my face, drink a lot of water, do a blood test, then continue dancing. So I was celebrating, because I was like, I'm not going to let diabetes control this. I need to stop letting it control me. Wow. And then that motivation you gave, like, you should go there. I was like, okay. I remember I called Shatul again. Shatul just comes into the picture. I called him like, Shatul, what do you do when the pump doesn't work? Dr. Roshni is not here. He's like, I don't know. He's like, I have not faced this problem called Medtronic. I called Medtronic. They didn't have a center in Goa. And I was like screaming, I'm like, it's my wedding day. I'm the bride. He's like, you'll have to come to Mumbai to exchange the pump. So I was like in that desperate mode, like, and I don't have that people, I don't have friends with diabetes, like, who have solutions. Today, I know what to do with it. Yeah. And that's when this all went. And I think the wedding, we left for a long time. We had good fun. And I remember looking up at the sky and said, it'll keep happening, but I'm not going to give up. I was laughing at the sky. My husband and mother got scared, because this bride is now looking at the sky, talking to it, laughing. I was like, I'm not going to let anything impact me. I'm not going to let it impact. It will happen. And there are a lot of such incidents that have happened. Wow. in my life with a pump, but yeah, I can
Oh my
I think if you
God.
want yeah, there's a lot of it that's there with the pump to talk about and not give up.
Wow. We should do another session probably on all your tips and tricks. We'll do another recording because I know you've got some really advanced pump skills now where you're able to make each site last for long. You know, if you go more than a certain number of units in one location, it might
Yeah.
conk out sooner. So you're aware of how to plan your meals so that you can get the maximum duration of each site so that you're having less scarring and you're able to
Yeah.
extend the usage of each kit and reduce your costs also that way. Is there anything we can talk about, since this particular recording we're keeping to the spiritual angle of it? Do I agree, is living with type 1 does force even a non-perfectionistic person gets trained and brainwashed to chase perfection, because you can't go high and you can't go low. If you go high, your organs are affected. If you go low, you could be unconscious on the road, right? You could get
Yes.
into an accident because you could just pass out, you could have a seizure. It could be an emergency now. And if you go high, you might lose some organs in the future. There's fear on both sides. So you
Yes.
get trained that there is a very real danger to not being perfect, like physical danger with not being perfect, and that's one of the hard things, I think. I can't speak from direct, but I work with you, I work with people who live with this, and I see what kind of thoughts you need to work on. It's not that what you're saying or chasing is wrong also. You are trying to stay in that safe zone, and you're trying to recreate a whole organ, and I think today we're talking not just about the fact that there's a power in trying to recreate the pancreas through the pump, but also the power of the mind in type 1, right? That's the thing that
Yes.
this particular conversation has been about. And do you remember, in terms of the drama triangle, anything you want to say about how you might have come out of it with the forgiveness and without being a victim? Can you kind of tell people what you did to come out of that drama? And also, maybe before we close this session, we'll show people what that EFT round can look like if they want to use it on themselves.
Sounds perfect. It's not an easy process. It's a work in progress, to be honest. I still do that. And this morning, I just practiced Reiki, and I felt another part of me heal, another little part of me heal all the time. So it's not something that's an ongoing process. It's something that if you do for the sake of it, it's not something that's going to work either. You need to believe, and it's very, very difficult for someone, or I mean varies person to person, but someone who has to always be in control of the situation, aims for perfection, wants to know what is going to happen next, to just surrender. It's
Mm,
so difficult to trust. Or for me, it was difficult to trust people. It's difficult to trust anything around. What if? There's always a what if in my mind, and like I said,
yeah.
a lot of it from fear of my
Yeah.
from mother or father. The stress of it had made me this a little paranoid person, who's always worried about every single thing, and always wanted to be someone who can achieve something despite having the condition. So it was that, and life has always thrown some kind of curveballs my way. But being or touching back to the spiritual side, because I always knew I had that in me. I've seen a image of me when I was 2, where I was praying in a white dress. It was
Oh.
beautiful just looking back at that. And during one such meditation, and this is when I used to do Reiki consistently for 2-3 years. This was after marriage. I started having lesser time, rushing from in-laws' house to your house to work to a lot of things suddenly. It was on me that I didn't wake up earlier to do it, because earlier I had the time to do this. Now I didn't. But there was an entire part where I slowly healed myself, because I saw that child in me while I was meditating, who was innocent, who was just going plucking flowers, or just going around seeking, smiling at everyone, dancing around, jumping around without any thoughts or anything there. Having a conversation with God and hugging. So there's an image that I had created in my mind. For example, if depends on who you worship or who you look up to. So my head was Jesus. So I went as a child and I hugged so tight, and I was crying here while I'm meditating. I'm crying, but it was such a strong message that if you want to grow, touch back to your roots as a child, because you were innocent. You didn't have negativity in your mind. You weren't thinking. You were kind. You were happy. You were willing to experiment. Like, and it's so important to also think about being animals and birds. They
Mm.
don't think. They just
Mhm.
live. They just live in the moment. And it was so important because a number of things, that one was EFT that helped me. Reiki definitely helped me, a lot of it. I also went for having conversations from an emotional perspective, hypnotherapy, to get things out. And I was told, you live on fear, you literally thrive on fear. Everything that you do comes from a place of fear. I'm like, I know, and that results into stress. And I'm like, I'm aware of it. And I knew that was what was causing it, but I had to get out of it. The other interesting thing that helped me was, again, something that you recommended to me, and I really appreciate it because I till date follow it, is following Eckhart Tolle, The
Mhm.
Power of Now and the New Earth. Oh my God, that book is just wisdom, and it's
Yes.
just it's so realistic, and how every difficult situation is for you to learn some things, for you to be conscious. I was not conscious all this time, and it
Yeah.
happens so often when you just lose base. For example, even recently, and I'm currently unemployed, I lost my job. That entire situation, I let the stress impact my health. Immediate reaction, and there was a lot of fluctuations, and I have got in retinopathy back again in my life. But it was something I did to myself with that stress, because it went back to being perfect. How can this happen to me? But I was listening to him, and he said, just focus on the present. And I was after all of that, I remember even my ex-employer was so surprised by the way I handled the situation. I was like, it's fine. It's okay. Maybe I'm supposed to be here for the first 6 months and then move out somewhere else. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be. But I have a roof over my head. I have good food. I have health. I have a good healthcare system. I today have a sensor. Oh my God, that's brilliant. I'm blessed, and everything has come at the right time. So it's
Yeah.
about me not focusing on the present. So it was a constant learning, because let's be honest, every person will not do this every day. Wake up, practice Reiki, meditate, attitude of gratitude, positivity. I mean, if people do it, I really, really, I aim to be that person.
Yeah.
Some days I don't do it because of timings or rushing to work, but you should not let go of that. And I did that in between for a year, 2 years, or in between when I just moved to the UK, I didn't have time to do so much of it. And it was a message. It's always a way that the universe sends it back to you. Like, and a message comes to me. You've not been meditating. You've not been focusing on the positive side. So it's just a
Mhm.
constant way um, of going back to that. When I didn't do this during the pandemic, and my A1C was 5.8, so it wasn't my blood sugar. But during the pandemic, I was in so much stress. Uh,
Mm.
Everyone was, but it was work related, working 14 hours, and the fear of losing the job. Though I was working very hard, 14 hours, a lot of hours, but I didn't get up to drink water despite that impact of the US. I didn't get up to drink water. My husband got a bottle of water. I got urinary infection by not drinking water, because I was just not doing that. A1C is 5.8,
Mm.
because I was having home food, low carb. I had moved to low carb by then. But spiritually, I'm like, why am I having such a difficult time in this organization? Why is my boss so difficult? And a message comes, it's for you to go back to meditating. You've stopped it. You need to. And there are messages just coming in. I'm like, I don't have time. I'm working 14 hours. When do you want me to do it? So, but it was important to just touch back to that, because today I am so much more confident, positive, happy as a person. I look up at the sky and I laugh at birds. I'm just looking at the park. I'm just happy looking at it. The pandemic, in fact, taught me a lot of that. Just be happy. What do you require materialistic things for? Like, what do you need? In this, you've survived 2 years in the pandemic without going out. And I was never a social person. I mean, I'm social as in while conversational wise, but not eating out because of the food, anyways. I didn't party, anyways. But it was more about you can live your life. That's what you need. You're on this earth not to sit and brag or prove yourself or be the most perfect human being or have the perfect life or what you believe is perfect. But it's about accepting who you are and what you can do. But that book helped me so much. It resonates so much with how to be present, and how each of us have pain bodies that we are so closely associated with, and I can see it. And it's also so interesting to see, I can feel when there's emotion, like when I'm irritated, I can feel it. And maybe small things, like because I like things perfect, and if my husband doesn't keep the place perfect, I get immediately irritated, but I notice it.
In the
I'm
body.
like, yeah, I can feel it. And then sometimes after I just snap, I'm like, why did I do that? I'm like, my ego was impacted. I shouldn't have done that. When I lost my job, my ego was impacted immediately. Like, me, I'm a hardworking person. I work 14 hours. I have sat here, sacrificed my health and done this. How can I do this? So it's an immediate ego reaction as opposed to accept it. I already got a job in a month. Like, I got another job, I got a visa, so I have the capabilities. It's a mind just creating problems and problems that just don't exist. And it
Yeah.
just continues creating it. And even for a person with diabetes, imagine when I lost weight and I was having low blood sugars because of the
Yeah.
body being sensitive to insulin, I had so many hypo incidents. It became crippling. I
Yeah.
was so scared to step out. I would not go anywhere. And my mother was anyway scared. She made me more afraid. But this time was happening to me because of, and we were reducing the basals quite a bit.
Yeah.
US also, we reduced the ICRs. There were a lot of changes that were happening around that time since Reiki and this. But it was so much of hypo. It was crippling. When I say crippling, I for first time couldn't step out of my house without the fear of fainting. I should just keep eating chocolates in fear, like it's going low, it's going low, it's going low. Then after a point, my body started playing that because my mind is telling you it's low. Then I
Oh.
started doing blood test. I'm like, and then an answer said do blood tests, and I caught it in the act. I said, don't fool me. I know it's
Oh.
not low because I'm like, I ate this. Logically, it should go higher. It can't be low. So then
Hmm.
the education helped me, but that crippling effect, it was through emotionally getting out of that cage that was created.
Wow.
And this can either empower you or just it just can cripple you. So I wanted to empower me, so I had to get out of that. So it's a constant thing, honestly. It can just happen anytime. With every blood test I would do, I put the glucometer there because my fear, it's 200, it's 200, it's 200. It's never a worry of hypo. My
Hmm.
fear, every time I do a blood test, I would move the glucometer that side. 7 times a day I would do it recently. Just change it because I didn't know what was happening, and it is a fear. So a lot of spiritual, yeah, a lot of meditation and constant grooming. And I think being positive, it's very easy to get into the negative side of things. It's so easy. But I think it was very important to stay optimistic. And I know that I can talk a lot more, but I will not. But it's just a touch point. And I'm sure if anyone has more questions, or I'm sure if there's something more, some examples that they would need, there's a lot that can be spoken about.
Yeah.
It's everyone's life, and it's an interesting conversation and a journey for everyone differently. And I'm glad that I've been on this journey for at least 10 years now. So it's beautiful.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I see you so different now. The first words that come to my mouth are gratitude, um, faith, surrender, and those were not the words that were there the first day when you walked into my room. And rightly so. You've been through a lot of things. Life has happened. And I think you're showing what life is. You're showing that life is to be in this moment, to connect back to your consciousness, to your soul. It's not just, today we're talking about type 1, but this video could help somebody who has
Yeah,
pancreas is fine, but maybe mind is not, settling
yeah,
down. Emotions are not settling down. Type 1, you go through the same feelings. Everybody, all of us have the same universal human experience, right? So maybe what we can do as we close is teach EFT to whoever has stayed for this whole video. Is let's teach them. So EFT is a combination of acupuncture science, Chinese acupuncture and acupressure science, plus neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. And it basically is a reframe. So the logic is you're going to say a statement and you're going to tap. And it could be, usually you use it when you're going through some problem, you're going through some trouble, some issue. It could be for a physical thing like a migraine, for insomnia. I've done a video on how I use an EFT for my insomnia. If I can't sleep, I normally sleep very well, but if I'm not able to fall asleep, I'll just do this and I'll conk off. People can use it for depression. You can use it for phobias, for PTSD. Could use it for any overwhelming emotion. And the way it works is, let's think of maybe, let's say today, both Liva and I, if we thought that we should have been done in 45 minutes, and now this video has gone to 60 minutes, and now the perfectionist in both of us, because I'm another perfectionist, right? Is two perfectionists. You don't get to be a doctor if you don't want to be perfect, right? You don't get to treat type 1 diabetes unless you know how to get the insulin dose perfect. So it's a very good match of neurotic, hyperthinking, hyperthinking people. So maybe we exceeded a timeline, right? So now we're getting, let's say we're getting agitated. So the sentence would be, even though I have exceeded my projected timeline and that makes me anxious, I still love and accept myself fully and completely. And while you're saying that, so it's, even though I have this problem, I still love and accept myself fully and completely. Now, if someone has a hard time saying that they love and accept themselves, because sometimes we don't feel like we're worthy of love and acceptance, because we've really hit a really low point, you could say, even though this has happened, I'm okay and I'm still here. And you could say only that much, because the roof is not falling over your head. You're feeling terrible in your mind, but you're here. And at this moment, you're at least okay. If that's the best that you can do, maybe you're just okay, right? So let's do that. This is the main point, and this is how you do it, right, Liva? Yeah. So let's just make up a mock one right now. Is, even though I was supposed to finish this interview in 45 minutes, and I've exceeded it and gone to 60 minutes, I still love and accept myself fully and completely. And you can go one layer deeper now, is, even though I think I'm running late and I can feel the anxiety in my stomach as butterflies, even then, I still love and accept myself fully and completely. And you can go deeper and you can check, what does that butterflies in your stomach feel like? Or what does the anxiety of being late feel like? What would happen if you were late? And what would go wrong? Oh, someone would yell at me. Oh, okay. So how would that be if someone yells at you? Oh, I would feel terrible. I would feel small and I would feel shrunken. Where do you feel that in your body? I feel that in my shoulders feel down and dark and gray. Okay, even though my shoulders feel down and dark and gray, if someone were to yell at me and I would feel so worthless, even then, I still love and accept myself completely. And you would put your hands on your chest, take a deep breath and blow it off. And you would have a sip of water, wash it off, keep tapping. And what we like to do to know if you're making progress with this, if you're feeling better, is give it a score when you start. Is, how stressed are you feeling that you're running late on this interview on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 on 10 is, this is the maximum stress I can ever experience. There's no higher level of stress if it's 10 on 10 stress. So maybe right now I was feeling like a 3 on 10 level of anxiety that I'm running late and I have other things to do. And then as you tap, you check, is that severity score going down? You want to be able to try and come back to it till the point that that number can become a 0. That's when you know that you've actually resolved a core negative belief or a core negative feeling. But this, of course, you can do it with a professional. The way that you and I are doing it these days is for light, small stressors and, manageable day-to-day problems. But there are options to work with professionals who are trained in this, who do this every day with their clients. And there are so many talented healthcare workers who are learning these kind of techniques. And there are so many other beautiful modalities. It doesn't have to be EFT or Reiki. Whatever helps you connect back with that form of you or that part of you that accepts yourself and loves yourself. Because what's that anyway? Whether that's God or that's divine consciousness or it's universe or it's presence or it's nothingness, that quiet, still place inside, So to wrap up, Liva, thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that all resonated with me right there because I was very anxious of going late. I was looking at the, I was looking there, I was like, there's so much more to talk about. How are we covering this?
Yeah.
So I was like,
Yeah.
this is never going to stop.
I know, and I just let you keep going because you were in flow and you were saying things that I think people will want to hear. So let's come back and do more of this. And there's always something to share and add value. So I'm sure we'll be back and doing more videos pretty soon.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Okay, take care. Stay well.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye.